Welcome to the Writer's Block, the latest, greatest, biggest, and baddest episode, grown-ups and kids stuff, brought to you by Sticklers, the dating service for anal retentives. I am Rylend Grant, screenwriter, Ringo Award-winning creator of comics like Aberrant, Banjax, and The Jump. The other voice in the dark, the man in the box to the right is...
David Avallone, screenwriter, filmmaker, comic book writer, and guy drinking out of a Too Much Coffee Man mug.
That is an impressive mug. Where does one get a mug like that?
From Shannon Wheeler at a convention. Nice. I don't know what you do when there are no conventions. I'm sure if you go to toommuchcoffeeman.com while we're doing commercials for people who aren't on the show, nice. You could probably find it. But yes, Shannon Wheeler, ladies and gentlemen, a terrific cartoonist.
Nicely done. So hell of a show today. Why don't you tee us up here? We'll go ahead and bring our guests on.
Well, our guests today are, let's bring them on, Troy Little and Brenda Little.
Hi.
Hey there.
And Richard Fairgray.
Hey.
All of whom currently are in Canada. Is that correct? Richard, are you still in Canada?
I am for another week and a half.
Nice.
Wow. The Canadian invasion.
Where are you headed to after?
I am being shipped back to New Zealand while my immigration is sorted out. I'm just being kicked out of country after country.
Oh.
It's actually nice. Like you two were like the last people I saw before I left New Zealand last time, and so now you'll be the last people I see before I leave Canada this time.
Oh, so there's something about us.
Yeah, it ends with us.
I'm sorry.
It always ends with us.
I'm sorry. Next time you see us, they'll ship me out again.
Well, guys, why don't you introduce yourselves? Richard, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Richard Fairgray. It's very easy to look me up because I'm the only Richard Fairgray in the entire world. I am a writer and illustrator of children's books and comics, mostly middle grade horror series. I do a book called Black Sand Beach, which the first volume is out and is coming out as an ebook if you're a stay-at-home isolation type like me. I'm doing I do a series called Blastosaurus about a crime-fighting triceratops, and I mean, I guess that's really it right now.
There. I can't remember bearings, I'm sorry.
And Brenda and Troy.
Yeah, I'm Brenda Hickey. I know you introduced me as Brenda Little, but
sorry.
I'm more known for my publishing. You're not wrong. I've got two names because I like to be confusing. But Brenda Hickey, known for Halls of the Turnip Moon. I created that one. I wrote it in Illustrator, and we self-published it together with our imprint Pegamoose Press early this year. I'm best known for my work on My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic with IDW Publishing. And I've recently been on a Gretzko with Oni Press.
Very nice.
And this is Troy.
So you seem to be indicating that my new book, Angora Napkin, is something you actually have in your possession.
Yes.
So that's very cool. I'm glad to see it made it all the way down there, despite various viruses, flames, and everything burning. So that's good.
Yes.
So that's cool. I'm Troy Little. I worked on writer-artist for Powerpuff Girl Comics, Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons. I've been doing that for a couple volumes now with Jim Zub. I did an adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas a number of years ago. And I work with this guy, Kevin Eastman, and David.
Who?
Something.
Oh, yeah. This here one up there, right? Yeah.
I thought it looked familiar.
Rearranged RONIN RAGDOLLS, I think it is. Yeah. Yeah, I was the artist on that. So, I know this guy a little bit anyway.
Very nice.
We never actually met in person. It's always been in a two-dimensional world. So.
And I think we've spoken on the phone, but this is our very first video call.
Is it our first?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Eastman is not big on the video calls. The plague has made him more open to the video call.
Okay.
But in general, he's a phone guy. We Gen X / boomers are phone guys. We predate all this Dick Tracy, video phone stuff. So we're not used to it.
I mean, we were talking before the episode started, backstage, as it were, about how common that is in this business. With these working relationships. I mean, I have artists, letterers, colorists that I've worked with for years, and I actually consider them sort of close friends. I feel very invested in their lives, but most of them don't speak English. You know, I mean, I have artists in Mexico, several in Brazil, Hungary. My go-to colorist is in Indonesia. My letterer is in the UK, which, you know, is a little bit different. But with most of these guys, they don't even speak English, so we communicate almost exclusively via email. You know, they plug it into Google Translate. They get about 90%, 95% of what I'm saying. The final 5% can be a little bit rough sometimes. You know, pay them almost, you know, exclusively via PayPal and all of that stuff. And it is an interesting business. And, you know, I think, you know, basically in the last 5 years or so, it's kind of blown up. I mean, it always existed to a certain degree, but this is very much the normal in the comics business, right? You work with somebody for years and you feel close to them and you've never actually met them, right?
I mean, even with Americans, one of my biggest collaborators is David Acosta, who's in Dearborn, Michigan, and we've still never met. We've done probably 30, 40 comic books together and have never been in the same room.
Well, how much do you think it's to do with writers keeping weird hours, though? Because I love working with people in other countries because they're going to be awake. Like, artists tend to have, like, far more normal daytime working hours, I think, than writers. And so if you're writing at 4 a.m., you can be like, oh, yeah, no, it's the middle of the day there. My artist is going to be up.
That goes both ways, though, right? Because, yeah, you have that scenario. But for me, I mean, I have a day job. My day job is writing, you know, movies and TV shows. And getting time to write is often hard to kind of orchestrate, right?
That doesn't count as a day job, right? That's not, when people say they have a day job, they mean, like,
yeah.
It very much is a slog of a day job sometimes, but I understand. Sometimes I sound like an asshole saying that, complaining that I get to write movies for a living. But the point I was getting at was, you know, it's sometimes I think, oh wow, tomorrow I'm going to bed, right? And I'm like, tomorrow I have the whole day. You know, first time in a month, I have an entire day to write. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to knock that pilot out. It's going to be glorious. It's going to be the greatest day that, you know, I've had in a year. And then I go to sleep. But while I'm asleep, my letterer is cranking away. My artist, you know, my colorist in Indonesia is cranked away. And I wake up and my inbox is full. And I have like an entire issue from the letterer to proof. I have 12 pages from the colorist to proof. I have layouts from this artist and layouts from that artist, and then my entire day shot, and I don't have my writing day. So, yeah, I get sneak attacked with the time. Like, I don't appreciate it at all. The time difference kills me.
It works for us because on a deadline, you know, like a Friday deadline, and we like, oh, we got 4 hours on California. Like,
yeah, from one extreme coast to the other. It's
yeah,
like, oh,
give it a bonus time for those little last minutes.
Yeah.
Where does I can't remember where Jim Zub lives.
He's in Toronto, right?
Oh, okay.
I think so. Yeah.
I've only ever run into him at a con or two.
Not.
But yeah, even
misinformation.
Even just with the Americans, again, like by the time I wake up, Dave Acosta's been drawing for 3 hours at least. Also, he has kids, so he's getting up. Just like Rylend, he's getting up way before I would be getting up, even if we lived in the same city with one another. I have, you know, cats jumping on me, but they can wait in a way that living humans probably shouldn't wait. But yeah, I will usually wake up to at least a couple of texts asking me questions, and you know, hopefully no one waits too long. But yeah, that whole thing of like, oh, I have all day tomorrow, and then you open up and you've got a lot of project management stuff to do.
I worked with an artist for about 6 years in Chile, and we never met in person. It was everything was just email. I'd never even seen a picture of him. And then we were going to be at the same convention. And the day before the convention, I was downtown having a little bit of day drinking. And I look across the street, and there's this guy, and I say, that guy looks like a character from my comics. That's weird. And I just took a shot. I was like, hey, Gonzalo. And he was like, oh, yes. And he like recognized me from the internet. It was so weird. But like, I was like, yeah, that's right. That's what we do. We all draw ourselves into every book.
Yeah, that's really funny. My latest one, The Jump, the protagonist is, I mean, he's the artist, Fabio Alves. He just drew himself. And the funniest thing is, I mean, you see those abs. Like Fabio does not have those abs, right? So
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
yeah.
Mhm.
And it works with the book. The whole idea, it's an astral projection book. So the whole idea is that the guy's kind of this like chubby schlub in real life, and then you see your ideal self in the astral world. So to his credit, he made himself a chubby schlub in the real world. But man, he really let loose with the muscles, and I have not let him hear the end of it. So
I do know that is a funny genre that I've noticed of artists who are conventionally attractive people who are using themselves as models clearly over and over and over again, where you go, oh yeah, she's always drawing Joelle Jones. That's pretty much just Joelle Jones in her comics, looking very much like her, who is a very beautiful woman. So when she needs to draw a very beautiful woman, she just pulls up a mirror and goes, hey, there's one right now.
That must be nice to have that certainty. Like, oh, this script calls for someone really good looking. I got that.
But yeah, we were going to talk about, with you guys in particular, you all have done children's stuff and adult stuff, and walking the line between those two genres, and what's different and what's the same, and how nervous do you make your publishers when you're working on a kid's book, but you also have Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas on the shelves?
Well, yeah, because let's just be straightforward. I'm actually banned in 7 states from doing children's stuff. So, my previous work has ensured that. So, yeah, I don't think I'd be getting that call anytime soon. But yeah, I'd like to hear about walking that line.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I started out when I started working with IDW, I was publishing. They were publishing my Angora Napkin books, and Chiaroscuro, some of my early self-published books. And one day I worked a lot of years in animation. I got kind of tired working in animation. I wanted to do comics, more of a full-time gig. So I'd asked them, having a little bit of a relationship with them, what did they have that maybe I could do? And they had just gotten the Cartoon Network license. The first thing they were going to launch with was Powerpuff Girls, which I was a big fan of. So I knew this show really well. I was a big fan of it. And I was like, oh, can I write it? Can I draw it? Can I color it? Can I do everything? Just that indie mentality of just give it to me and let me do it all. And they're like, you've never worked in monthlies before. It's going to eat you alive. And I found out pretty quick that was the case. But they did give me a good chunk of, I did like 8 issues of Powerpuff Girls, I think, before our son was born. And then I was just handing.
Were you writing those and coloring them and drawing them, or were you just drawing them?
Some of them.
You didn't get to color all of them, but you wrote all of them.
Yeah, I colored about 3 issues. I lettered as much as they'd let me, and I do everything as much as I could. Just that control freak nature in me, Dave. So one day I'm just handing in my pages, and I get an email from IDW saying, business as usual, everything's looking good. Would you be interested in pitching for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? And I'm like,
interesting.
It was way out of the blue, and I'm like, why would you think to get the guy who draws Powerpuff Girls to do, the drug novel of the 70s, adaptation, which is one of my favorite books. So I'm like, well, for whatever reason, you sent this to me. Yeah, I want to pitch for it. And then I proceeded to not pitch for it for a long time because it's one of my favorite books, and I just know I'm going to do it a huge disservice by putting my fingerprints on it. I can only make it worse is what I was thinking. But I love it so much that if somebody's going to do it, it might as well be me, because at least I care about it. If I screw it up, at least my heart's in the right place. And I eventually was forced to put in a pitch because I was avoiding it. And 2 days later, they said, you're off Powerpuff Girls. This is what you're doing for the next year and a half, is adapting Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So it was a huge switch from what I was doing to what I went to do. So I love both things. Like, I love Powerpuff Girls. I love Fear and Loathing. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, I have to give up one cool project for another cool project. Okay.
That's wild. I did not realize that. I assumed you came to them with Fear and Loathing. I had no idea that was something that was a license that IDW just randomly picked up.
Ted Adams was a huge fan of Hunter's work, and it was like his dream project to make that happen. So I found out much later at one of the San Diego Comic Cons. They had sent this to like everyone. Everybody had a shot at this book. Like I couldn't believe that it hadn't been signed up by somebody. Like, so what happened, I guess, is that they had a real idea or a vision of what this should look like, and if it wasn't going to look like that, we're not going to do it. And everything that they were getting back was not quite hitting the mark, you know. And I'm thinking, oh my God, Jim Mahfood should do this, and all these different people should. They're like, oh, we pitched Jim Mahfood, he wouldn't do it.
Yeah, he didn't even respond. Did he say?
No, he said, nope, not touching it. It's my favorite book. I'll screw it up. Like same as me, except he didn't bite, you know. So anyway, tons of people had pitched for it, and I guess for whatever reason, IDW wasn't feeling it from the samples they were getting, and they were about to just kind of let the option they had on it lapse, when somebody kind of like at a meeting said, you know, any ideas? And somebody's like, what about Troy Little?
Wow.
Yeah, because I did some of my other work, and it's kind of cartoony, and they're like, maybe that could work, you know?
Do you think they were kind of looking at it and thinking like, you know, the way Troy writes the relationship between Professor Utonium and Mojo Jojo is Gonzo and Raoul. By the way, that silence that I had before was me trying desperately to pull all my references together to make that joke.
Nicely done.
That's a pretty good pairing, though, yeah.
I think it's wild that I had no idea. I hired and here's the funniest part of that chain. Me and Kevin Eastman hired you to do the Ragdolls on the strength of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, not having a single clue that you had done the Powerpuff Girls, which is very close to the Ragdolls.
Yeah.
You know, we had no idea you had done something exactly like the Ragdoll. And I will admit, I didn't think about the Powerpuff Girls when we were developing it. But once it was done, everyone was like, well, it's 3 girls. It's got the Japanese influence. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely it. You know? I will say that, and this is a complete aside, but I'm not often jealous of someone else's writing. There's a Powerpuff Girls gag that is, I am so angry that I didn't come up with that joke first. There's an episode where they're fighting some evil super genius, and he, like Blofeld, he has the little white cat, and they defeat him. They adopt the cat, bring it home, and the cat takes over their professor and turns him evil. And the idea that in the James Bond movies, it's the cat running Spectre. Blofeld is just an empty suit being controlled by the cat. That is a genius. And especially because if you know the series, for a lot of external reasons, Blofeld kept getting replaced by different actors. So it's always a different guy playing the head of Spectre, but it's the same white cat. So just whatever writer went, what if it's the cat running Spectre and the guy in the Nehru jacket is just a cutout, is totally unnecessary. He's just there to do the speaking for the cat. I'm totally jealous of that idea. It's such a great one.
Girls was a really smart show because it really demographic. It was cool for girls. It was action and kick-ass for boys. It was funny for adults. Like it hit every mark, and everyone. I don't know anyone who doesn't like the Powerpuff Girls, and that's why it was so great.
Oh, it's a terrific show.
Yeah.
Richard, how about you? How do you balance the two?
I flip wildly between them, and then every time I do one of them for too long, I almost snap. I had to give myself a real pep talk before coming on here tonight and be like, you need to not go fully adult for this conversation because it is being recorded. Like, you can have your drink, but you need to remember that, like, you have a kid's book coming out regularly, and that your adult content where you make some bad life choices in a memoir maybe isn't the thing to talk about all the time. But it's way more fun. So, for instance, the other day, I had to go. I've been in total isolation now for 195 days, and with one brief flight because of deportation, and I had to go get an eye test, and my husband was in getting his one first, so I had a full hour. Why am I telling the story? I'm sorry. He's in there for a full hour, and I'm sitting in the car, and I need to go to the bathroom, and I can't because I can't bring myself to go into the McDonald's because I'm terrified of everything at this point.
Sure.
So long story short, I'm pooping in the back of my van, and and the thing is, I had a garbage bag. We had some old clothes that were thrown away. It all worked out. I put it in the trash. Everything was fine. When I got my eye test done, the optometrist came close to me and almost touched me, and I burst into tears. It was a good day. It was a good start to my week. But then afterwards, I had maybe 4 phone calls that afternoon, and every single one of them, I excitedly told them about the fact that I'd pooped in a van that morning.
I'm so proud of it, telling us.
Because I've spent the past several months doing nothing but, like, whenever I'm speaking to anyone, I am publicly promoting a family-friendly, albeit horror-based, but family-friendly comic book. I'm like, where do I get to let out the I'm a garbage person deep down.
And the family-friendly book is Black Sand Beach, right?
Yes, it is.
And the memoir. Who, is this
memoir,
the same publisher or the?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Black Sand Beach is from Pixel and Ink Books, and it's an ongoing graphic novel series. I like to call it a comic series, but people don't like it when I do that for some reason. It is a 200-page book every year about a kid spending a summer at a horrible falling down beach house, and there is a haunted lighthouse and a dimension of pure darkness trying to break its way through and infecting the sand and making everything dark and sinister and distorting everything that's there. Loosely based on my own childhood where I spent all my summers at a haunted lighthouse. And it's I mean, really from an adult perspective, it's about a kid dealing with massive amounts of trauma, but like with fun goofs. And then my adult thing is a memoir called Octopus. One of my adult things, but the most recent is a memoir called Octopus, about 2 years of my life where I went from basically bridging the gap from a suicide attempt to realizing things were going to be okay because I'd moved to Hollywood. And it covers a lot of drinking and poor decisions and grinder adventures and meeting fun dogs, and my ongoing fear that I am turning into an octopus because of the ink stains I leave everywhere, amongst other gross imagery.
And does that have a publisher? Are you self-publishing that?
I've done nothing with it. It's one of these things where I've had a couple of offers, and I always get scared because if I put this out, like when I was in New Zealand, I had a backlog of books. I have 230-something books to my name at this point, and 11 of them are available in America or worldwide. And so I'm sort of really trying to find that balance where I'm like, hey, when I had 200 books, I could put out anything I wanted, and I had so much other stuff there that I could be like, hey, you go to that area of the booth, you go to that area of the booth, you're at different ages, you'll find different things you like. Now, I'm like, okay, launching a kids book, launching 2 kids series in America, probably got to sit on this one for a bit. It's on, like, I have it all online. I have a sort of a separate imprint for that stuff, which is called Richard Sucks. And it's spelled with an X, obviously, because I'm awesome. And that's kind of where I get to put those sort of things. And David, you have one called Morty that I'm working on. That I will not be promoting that through my kid-friendly pages because it's about someone taking a dump and eating corn. So it's a horror story. Don't worry.
Sure.
I'm starting to see themes running through all these stories.
Sure.
I mean, this is an interesting phenomenon, right? I mean, so you write kids' books, and there are the rules of promotion, the rules of how you live your life publicly change, right? What are the new obligations, and how do you embrace them or skirt them or thumb your nose at them? I think that's an interesting bit of food for thought.
Well, you kind of have to make a choice as to who you're going to want to appeal to. Like, I am a disabled gay immigrant. There's a large percentage of the population who are already going to be opposed to me because of that. So I have to look at it and be like, well, if I'm going to sell books to kids, I'm going to sell them directly to the kids and not the parents who already hate me. And I can do that by talking a lot about poop, apparently. I don't know.
Well, kids love poop. I mean, I think that's an undeniable thing. Brenda, have you ever written any adult stuff? And by adult, I mean just literally like not for children, not, you know.
No, nothing too bad. I think Turnip King is as bad as I get because it's got that one little naughty bit.
It has a censor bar on it.
Yeah,
too.
it has a censor bar over her chest.
Very, very peachy.
Yeah, so it's totally played for gags. It's not serious at all, and it's very influenced by like all the manga I grew up with, where they'd have those kind of naughty scenes, and a lot of teen manga would have that. So it's like
Sure.
not so bad, but it's kind of that's as it's like
So
Trust in the
Go ahead.
studio here because I'd be at one point working on Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas at this desk.
and I'd be on ponies still. So it's like
So our kids would come in and be like, "You can go see what mom's doing." Like,
Yeah.
Their mom and dad's doing.
yeah.
So Brenda, you always wanted to do kid stuff. You sort of thought kid stuff. I'm interested how that decision was made, and then I guess also, I mean, you guys have kids, and so how has that influenced the work you're doing? You know, how did that change the way you approach things? Is it I mean, because I have a 3-year-old, and it has certainly changed the way I look at entertainment. I mean, I'm a guy who writes hard R-rated movies, kind of kick you in the face action movies, and I've never written anything else, never wanted to write anything else. However, now that my daughter is kind of coming of age and starting to sort of become a person, and I spend a lot of my time just sitting on the couch, particularly in quarantine times, watching, Ninja Turtles and now Avengers with her and whatnot. And I watch how she kind of consumes things and how things affect her. I now suddenly have this fatherly urge to create for her. And so I'm wondering how that affected you also.
I think it's just what I naturally gravitate towards. There wasn't any big decision, like I'm going to make a decision right now. What am I going to write? It's just, that's just kind of what appealed to me. I just like the energy and the goofiness of kid stuff, that it just feels like you're not allowed to do so, like, I don't know, when you get to be an adult, sometimes it feels like, oh, it has to be gritty and serious and deal with issues. And sometimes it's like, can I just have some fun? I just want some fun. And so I think that's why I kind of gravitate towards that. And YA, like teen stuff, still kind of has that energy, but you can get into a bit deeper if you want. So that's kind of where I stop, because I just like that energy of kids entertainment that is just so kinetic, and I love that on a page. It's one of my favorite things about comics, is the kinetic energy of something that's static is really exciting to me. But it doesn't mean like I love seeing anything in comics. It's just my personal preference, what I bring to the page. But yeah, there's lots of different things that I consume that I enjoy that are, could be more gritty and could be this or that. I'm kind of all over the board, but when it comes to what I create, I tend to just stick to the kid stuff. Because yeah, I draw kind of cute too. I don't think adults want cute in their art style, maybe not. So they want, I don't know.
All of Richard's adult stuff is adorable. It's very, very cute. Some of it is horrifying. And the same thing with Troy. I mean, the art in Fear and Loathing is, for want of a better word, it's attractive. I mean, it's not Stedman, it's not that look. And I think that's probably one of the reasons it works for that.
Yeah, we were both really big Looney Tunes fans growing up, and there's like that old kinetic energy and the wacky, the expressions and stuff.
Yeah, and the antic of it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just like watching that stuff and seeing that stuff, and like it's weird because the way I draw, I feel, is more based on the cartoons I would have watched growing up, whereas like the comics I read can be some of that, but they're all over the board. I just want to read every comic I can. If I like it, I just like it.
Yeah, we spent a night here recently. We like cracked a bottle of wine and we just started going on like a 2-hour rampage of like how awesome comics are. And we're just pulling books off the shelf. I'm like, look at this, look at this, look at this. Like, and almost everything we own in here is like, it's not a Marvel or a DC comic. It's everything but. there's such a great variety of stuff we've got, from Bone to From Hell and everything in between.
Yeah.
So
I really like that as the outer limits of comics. Bone and From Hell on the other side.
I like that as a pitch for a comic. It's kind of Bone meets From Hell. I think you have a winner there.
Serial killer.
If you don't write it, I'm going to. So,
well, isn't that just Silence of the Lambs though, where you replace the cow suit with the skin of women?
Yeah. What was it?
They're much faster.
What were the influences on you, Richard, to work on children's stuff and to do stuff for kids?
Anger mostly. I was doing the I was obsessed enough with Ninja Turtles as a 4-year-old that when we had to do book reports at school, and this lasted through till I was 8 or 9, I would just make up books about the Ninja Turtles and be like, yeah, that's the book I read. It was about the Ninja Turtles based on the TV show. You don't know it. And I would write these long book reports explaining this plot. I think I've always had this real chip on my shoulder that there was no media created for me, and I'm pissed about it. And so as an adult, I get to be like, hey, kid Richard, you little weirdo, sitting off in the corner by yourself, not talking to anyone. Here's a book for you to read. You'll like this one. And I think that, we all like to think of ourselves as being outsiders and whatever, but I think every single one of us is. And so that's it seems to have resonated pretty well. But when I was doing this book, Blastosaurus, back in New Zealand. I mean, I did it in America as well, but it ran for 10 years in New Zealand. And it was, what I wanted it to be was fun adventures about a crime-fighting Triceratops. But my co-writer, I use that term loosely at the time, was very insistent that it should be a gritty story about a cop who is a dinosaur. And I was like, well, I don't like cops, so I wanted him to work at a laundromat. When I dumped him and moved to America, I did have him live in a laundromat because it's just a really good source of income, and you don't have to explain it. The dude just has a lot of spare change. But when I've been thinking about making picture books for years, and I'd never done it. My first celebrity crush was Morris Sendak, and then when he died, I went to a bookstore to go and buy my favorite book by him, Pierre, and the bookstore didn't have it. And they didn't have anything by him. And every single book they had was every single kid's book they had was a Disney tie-in or any kind of licensed thing. And they were all wrapped in plastic like Laura Palmer and had a toy with them. And I just got so mad because as a kid, going into a bookstore and touching books was the best thing. And now kids couldn't do that because everything was designed for people who don't know kids very well to walk in and buy something on their way to a birthday party. And so I went home and I wrote my first picture book. 3 days later, I had it drawn and colored and was sending it off to the printer, and with no plan for what we were going to do with it. And I was like, print 10,000, we're going to change the world somehow. I don't know. And then by pure chance, I stumbled into a distribution office to drop off something for something else. And I was like, you guys want to distribute a children's book for me? And they're like, show it to us. I did. And then we had no children's books. And so it was sort of I practiced with Blastosaurus, but I'd been thinking about picture books since I was a kid. And so everything kind of just happened all at once. And I work on a million things at a time. While all this was happening, I was doing a project with my friend Theo where we were making a 10-page comic every week on top of our regular stuff because DC were releasing the first time they did the 52 thing. And we're like, well, if DC can do 52 books in a year, damn it, so can we. And so we put out 52 new comics that year just to prove that the two of us could. And so, it was always just having that I've forgotten the question. I lost the thread. I started doing kids' books out of anger is really the answer. And
it's a good, I think a lot of us, we create the things that we want to see in the world. I think that's a general thing for anybody who has even the smallest amount of creative control over their work, is you make the thing that you wish someone had made for you. or what you wanted more of in the world, or all of that. So not always anger, but sometimes anger, sometimes disappointment, sometimes just give me more of that. And God knows Bugs Bunny is the biggest influence on me. You guys mentioned, cartoons, to the degree that I'm still the anthology that Richard mentioned, the horror anthology. I got a character design this morning from an artist who's in Rome, named Silvia Califano. She does the Star Trek book for IDW. Really talented artist. And there's a witch in the story. And I told her, I want Witch Hazel from the Bugs Bunny cartoons drawn photorealistically. Like, take that incredibly simple line drawing and draw that as if that was a three-dimensional woman in the real world. And she did it, and it's amazing. Nice. And I did an issue of Elvira where she it was a thing where she's in the panel and then she has exited the panel in the between the two panels she exits. And I told Dave Acosta, I need 3 bobby pins hanging in the air after she's exited. And he's like, what is that for? And I showed him the clip. He's like, oh, yes, of course. I remember the bobby pins that hang in the air after the witch exit.
Yeah. You say I'm like Witch Hazel because I leave bobby pins all over the house.
Yeah, it's like that.
It's a great shorthand, and it's a great visual language, even though it's animation, not comic books.
And you're exactly right, too, when you said, like, we create something that we want to see in the world that we don't see. Like Angora Napkin that you were just holding up, it's been a project I've been working on for over 22 years in my spare time in various facets. But in 1997, when me and the co-creator Nick Cross came up with it, we were just kind of like, everything in TV sucks. There was no good cartoons that we enjoyed. There was no Looney Tunes, Animaniacs and everything were done, and it had its day. And we're just like, there's nothing good on. We should make the show we want to see. That was the kind of the idea for it. And we originally created Angora Napkin as an animated pilot, as a series. And a couple months later, the Powerpuff Girls came on Cartoon Network. And we're like, oh, 3 girls, like Angora Napkin, and a lot of the same kind of influences and humor. So my co-partner there and creator kind of was like, well, they did it and they did it better, so I'm going to go do something else. Meanwhile, I like Angora Napkin. I want to keep stories. And so I made the graphic novels, and we did make an animated pilot. It didn't get picked up, unfortunately, but it was just because we wanted to make the show we wanted to watch and put all of our crazy influences, It was basically the idea of like 3 girls in a musical pop group in horrible situations. They can't really see the dark side of it because they're shown a knife. They're so happy and upbeat all the time, but it's Evil Dead 2. They're stuck in the cabin with, or their Franz Kafka nightmare kind of thing, So it was a lot of fun making those stories, and I kind of found a way to kind of take it and turn it into comic books. So it's nice to have just finished the final Angora Napkin book after all these years and get to move on to some other projects.
So this is the last one. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. It just came in the mail a couple of days ago.
Yeah, that's it. I had a stretch goal in the Kickstarter that if we got $100,000, I'll make another book. We came about $83,000 short of that goal, so I guess nobody wanted it bad enough.
Just a few dollars.
That close.
Still a good haul.
So
we write what we want to see, and I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, the other thing, I am obsessed with the idea of writing as therapy. I mean, that's always been the case for me. I mean, writing for me is about, getting my demons into a room and, beating the shit out of them or letting them beat the shit out of me and just spilling it onto a page, right? And so I think there's at least some of that in everybody. And I'm interested in kind of exploring the adult content, children's content divide in that, because
Did I freeze or did you?
He froze.
I mean, I can jump in on this because I've been thinking about this a lot.
You
Sure.
The thing about the book I'm writing, Black Sand Beach, it's horror. And the best kind of horror is what are things that children are afraid of, right? Not just a big scary monster, but like the stuff that children really think about. In the second book, the main character Dash, he meets these two girls who are ghosts, and they don't remember dying, and he realizes they never died, they just forgot how to be alive, specifically because they forgot how to breathe. And as a kid, that's really scary, because all of us had that idea of like, what happens if we forget how breathing works? And now that Rylend disappeared, should we all talk about him, or should we ask the question of?
No, keep going.
Okay. Man, that Rylend guy, right? What's his deal?
He's unreasonably tall.
I've only met him sitting down. I'm not sure I've met him. I think I met him. I was dressed as Hamburglar if I did, so not a great first impression.
I think I remember that night. Anyway, continue.
That night.
Yeah, the Hamburglar. Let's just call it the Hamburglar night. And
It was the grimace. It got messy.
there we go.
Oh, technology. God damn it.
Our square order is
Yeah, I'm feeling.
Oh, we're shuffling. Oh, it's just me now.
I don't think it was necessary to reshuffle, but okay.
Here we go.
Fun.
Okay.
Fun. I'm glad to have been a wrecking ball in this entire conversation.
So, Richard, what were you get back to what you're saying?
Well, so what's interesting is like the divide between adult and kid stuff, and the divide between therapy and writing is that like Black Sand Beach is hands down the most clearly trauma-inspired thing I've ever written. Like, it's about a boy who cannot remember the thing that happened to him last summer because it was so terrible that his mind has blocked it out. Or in the story, the darkness has literally ripped it out of him before he left the beach. He's having to slowly revisit things and figure out who he used to be while facing massive demons. I mean, I'm doing this all with like hilarious goofs and fun action adventure and like 4 12-year-old kids running around at a spooky beach in a haunted lighthouse. But like, it's from an adult perspective, it's very clearly trauma inspired and very scary. Now, I get notes all the time saying like, I get nervous because I make stuff that I think is pretty terrifying in this book, to the point where like, when the first and second volume of it I did when I was living in LA, and I was in an office that is kind of haunted, and I was staying there overnight every night, and there was a big problem where a lot of very crazy homeless people from Hollywood Boulevard would be like shifted at 2:30 a.m. by the cops down to Sunset Boulevard, and on the way they would try and break into my office if they saw the light was on. So I always had to like hide and keep the lights off while I was working. And I'd be writing these scary stories about a haunted lighthouse in a complex that has an actual haunted lighthouse in it, and like genuinely scaring myself. And I would contact my editor. I'd be like, hey, is this too scary? Because like we have a kid being replaced by a creature that's like a upright green horse with a mouth in its stomach. And she'd be like, no, that's fine. But like, you do keep having people fall on their bottoms and get hurt. Can you stop having them get stabbed in the bottom by things? And like, it's weird that that's the line. Like, I would understand it if I was like, hey, let's do some jokes about how the parents aren't present in the adventure because they're all doing sex stuff. Then I'd be like, yeah, don't put that in. But when it's like, I mention farts or butts or poop, which, as you know, I don't like to talk about, it's like called out and said like, hey, tone that down. But when I'm like, hey, here's a story, like I have a story. I've got a collection of short horror fiction coming out soon, and it's based on a podcast I did earlier in the year called Tales from Black Sand Beach. It's a whole tie-in thing, and it's scary stories set in the same place but unrelated to the main storyline. And when we recorded the first episode, I sent it to a friend of mine who has 5 kids aged 15 to 9, and he played the first episode for them. They were all lying on the floor around his phone listening to it, and he sent me an email afterwards, and he said, sorry it took so long to email, had to clean up a bunch of blood. My second oldest child got so scared that she tried to run out of the room, but on the way kicked the second youngest child in the face. She lost a tooth and was bleeding everywhere, but wouldn't get up because she needed to know what happened in the story. And that's fine. I'm allowed to scare people as much as I want. And the more scary I get, the more my editors say, do more of that. Scare them more. Make them cry more. But if I'm like, hey, this character has to go to the B room to do a big old poop. No, can't do that. Richard, you're going to cross the line there if you mention poop again.
Well, that is a particularly American psychosis. The anything violent is fine.
Yeah, it's the
There's no-
have a toilet right in their house, doesn't that?
Yeah, but sex and toilets, forget it. Like that's completely out of there.
Honestly, one of the most surprising things when I moved to America, and a lot of people outside of America won't know this if they're watching, but when I first moved there and realized that you guys don't use bathrooms at all, that really surprised me.
Yeah. Based on what you'd say.
That was terrible.
Yeah. What about autobiography in your work, Brenda?
I don't know. I've got a big family, and I'm afraid I'll get in trouble with them. So I'm like,
Fair enough.
do I want to have this conversation with my parents? Like, why would you make us look like this in this comic? And why would you do that? Of course, the only comic you'd read by me is the one with you in it. I didn't want you to see. So that's just how I feel about that.
Yeah, I could get into Craig Thompson type here.
Yeah, Craig Thompson, I don't know how he does what he does, because I know he had issues with his parents over blankets, but it's like, that's brave.
Yeah, you just kind of like put yourself out there in a very vulnerable kind of way, and include almost like the people who raised you by name and stuff, and still try to find.
I definitely prefer to stick to metaphor.
Yeah.
So it's like I think of those things that I might put in an auto bio, but I'm like, how can I fictionalize that and put it in a fantastical way? So
you got to just go all in. Like, I think it was Scott McCloud who would say, "Write like everyone you know is dead," which I misinterpreted and thought he meant just write obituaries for all your friends. Sorry, that's dumb. But like, I always, my family don't read any of my books ever. My mother, in fact, got very angry because I couldn't get her a free copy of my latest book. And I was like, you can just buy one. Like, you can just buy it. That's easy enough. Like, I don't have copies yet. My advance has not arrived yet. You can just buy it. And she said, I don't want to spend money on it, Richard. I'm not going to read it. Because that was like, but.
Oh, family.
Occasionally, my family will get upset because they'll hear about something I've written, and I always respond to them like, if you didn't want me to be a writer, you would have been nicer to me.
Yeah. No, my wife's ex, by sheer coincidence, and it really is a coincidence, has a similar name to one of the villains in Drawing Blood. Like, I didn't choose it by that. I didn't choose the name by that yardstick at all. He has nothing in common with the guy. But he was like, so his name is Don Spiro, and the character's name is Spiridon, which is an actual name. Spiridon. It is and I came up with the name because I needed a third. There are 3 Lithuanian brothers, and they're based on a pair of Lithuanian brothers I know named Adolphus and Jonas. I needed a third brother, and this is the kind of like overthought nonsense that I do. But Tito, the Yugoslavian dictator, snuck into Yugoslavia using a passport that identified him as a man named Spiridon Mekis, which is also the name of Jonas and Adolphus. So I was like, oh, there's the third Mekis name. It's a joke about European dictators. But my wife's ex is like, so Spiridon, the bad guy, the murderer. I'm like, wasn't thinking about you, Don, but even when you don't have the slightest intention that way, people will still see themselves. People will still say, "Oh, this is all about me."
Yeah, people will read into it and project upon it that character represents me, and they see themselves in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd always think that when I was out doodling. This is how cool of a 20-year-old I was. I'd go out with my friends to the bar and we'd draw.
Nice.
And then the bartender would come over.
I'm going to describe some fun activity. Like, we hung out and had wine and
And then the bartender would come up and she'd be like, "Oh, you're drawing me, are you?" I'm like, I hate that. Just not you. You're drawing me. Oh, I look so good. No.
the most fun you could have.
Everybody wants to project.
Yeah.
Even the bartenders when you're a little girl.
I had a guy. I did Elvira was in Hell in issue 6 or 7 or 8. I can't remember, of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. And I had a Comicsgate guy. I had to run into a Comicsgate guy in Hell. And the artist drew Ethan Van Sciver. Like, was not abstract at all. We didn't name the guy, though. Someone who's not Ethan Van Sciver made 4 videos about how I was obsessed with him and used him as a character in a comic book. Still don't know who the guy is. Haven't bothered to watch the videos. But the titles of these videos are literally, David Avallone is obsessed with me. They came up in a Google search, and I kind of looked at the description. I was like, I'm obsessed with this person I've never met or heard of. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess is pretty proud that he looks a lot like Ethan Van Sciver. I don't know. It's just...
I mean, look, if Gerald Jones can look in a mirror and say, damn, I'm a beautiful woman to draw, then someone gets to go, damn, I look like Ethan Van Sciver, I better get on YouTube.
Yeah. But the time and energy to do that, I mean, he absolutely spent more time making those videos than I did writing that comic book.
You show incredible restraint not having watched them. I don't know that I would have been able to...
Because it's literally, the thing I always try to remind myself about the internet is that before the internet, you wouldn't have heard any of this stuff. You wouldn't have had to hear it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You meet someone at a party, they don't like you. You don't ever have to hear their opinion of you ever. You know what I mean? Like, you don't seek them out. It's like that person vanishes from your site the minute they vanish from your site. And I think the best thing about the internet is, as a form of communication, is that you can make people disappear forever and never see them again. Like, that's a huge plus. So choosing what to put in your mind, especially, I have gotten it down to a science where I can read the first 8 words of a review of one of my books and know that I don't want to read the rest of the review.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'll read a positive review, but a lot of times I see like, nah, this isn't going a good way. I don't need to have this in my mind. You know, it's not. And, you know, all due respect, I know some wonderful people who are comics journalists and comics reviewers, but the quality of reviewing in general has fallen off a cliff, it feels like, in the last 20 years. And there's a lot of... I sometimes get positive reviews for my comics that I won't share because I'm like, this is so poorly written that this good review reflects badly on me. Like,
it was written by the guy's cat. That was the problem.
You made this person who reads at a 4th grade level very excited. It's like, I don't want anybody to know that that's what I did in a non-children's book, by the way. But it is an interesting thing. I mean, we haven't touched on that, but Troy and I work on the radically rearranged RONIN RAGDOLLS together, and we're just finishing up the next super special, 40-page special, that Troy came up with the story idea and pitched it to us. And I loved the story idea, and the thing I loved about it the most is that I could not have come up with it in a million years, because it's just not... I'm not tuned to children's entertainment in that way.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting when you said that, because when you and Kevin, you wrote the first one, right? And it was very much like a throwback homage to the Ninja Turtles, as well as every other kind of origin story you can mash into it, you know. And what I was thinking, you know, do we do an issue 2? Do we do in 3 and 4? Or like the Ninja Turtles, it's been through so many iterations, and the big iteration of Ninja Turtles that took off was a Nickelodeon cartoon. So kind of the idea of taking it into the cartoon world, making it a little bit more for kids in that way, was, I thought, a cool way to go, as opposed to just kind of, you know, in issue 2.
No, it was a great idea. I mean, one of the things we love about the Ragdolls is the ability to comment on the entire history of comic books from, you know, the late 80s to the present day, and dipping into all of the all of the ways in which that has been booted and rebooted and rebooted and rebooted. You know, so yeah, to do, I think we're called the RAGDOLLS animated adventures. Just like the Batman animated adventures and the, you know.
It was definitely playing more to my strengths, I think, in the second volume than the first one was really challenging, just because it was not kind of in my comfort zone. And
it's amazing work, though. I can understand why you didn't want to do it a second time.
There's a bit of that in there too. It's like, I don't know, I could do that again.
Yeah.
So.
No, it was inking Kevin Eastman is not for the faint of heart.
Wow, yeah. Much like the Fear and Loathing thing, I kept thinking every time I'm touching this, I'm bringing the quality down because I want to see Kevin do this book, not me do it over his layouts. You know, like because Kevin's gonna nail this.
Yeah, it's hard to work over someone's layouts because they have a very particular way of setting up a scene, and you wouldn't have done it that way. So you're suddenly having to figure out a layout you would have like that doesn't come naturally. So it's a little tricky. Definitely
is for an artistic point of view. It's just like you have some tricks in your bag that you go to, and you're like, I know how to, you know, set up a page and know how to make your eye follow and all this stuff. But that's your specific kind of approach to designing a page or designing a layout or whatever, playing to your strengths in some ways, trying to make it all work.
Yeah.
And then somebody else, it's like, okay, I am another individual entirely with an entire different way of looking at the world and comics and layout.
And interpreting it to a piece of paper.
And I think we can safely say that Kevin is a very unconventional artist.
Yeah.
I noticed, you know, I've told this story before, but that was the first issue of RAGDOLLS was the first time I ever used something approaching Marvel style. Because I was writing it, I had outlined it. Kevin had okayed the outline and said he was going to do layouts. And when it came to writing it, and I got to the first fight scene, I was like, "You really want to tell Kevin Eastman how to lay out animals doing martial arts for 5 pages, huh?" And I called up Kevin and I said, "I'm going to Stan Lee this and say ninja fight scene for 5 pages.
Yeah,
I'll add the quips later. You just make it happen for 5 pages, and at the end this person is knocked over and this person is running away. Get there and it'll be fine." And we did that in about 3 sequences in the book. And but I noticed, you know, one of the many reasons I didn't write those pages is I noticed when I was thinking about it, that particularly the artists, the cartoonists who are used to writing and drawing their own work, do not stop at the average 4 to 6 panels a page. Like that's the average. As a comic book writer, you're told, do not write a page with 20 panels on it for some artists. They will hate you for the rest of their life. But then I go back and I look at Eastman, I look at Chaykin in American Flag, I look at Miller in Dark Knight Returns. Those guys are drawing 20 panels a page routinely. And some of them are little tiny TV panels and all that kind of stuff. Some of it is repetition. But it's like, yeah, when you don't have a collaborator, you can do whatever the hell you want. But I wasn't going to sit there and write a 17-panel page for Kevin to draw. Let the artist make that horrible decision for themselves, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a good call.
It seemed like a good idea to get out of his way. When he said he wanted to do the layouts on it, I was like, that's amazing, and I'm very flattered that you want to do that. You know, but yeah, I stayed out of his way, and I think it came out great. And you know, you brought something to it that we didn't want it to look exactly like the Ninja Turtles from the 80s. We wanted it to be something 1992, something influenced by the Turtles, but not of that brand completely.
Yeah.
So different look. But
yeah, no, it worked. It worked for sure. Yeah, and I think it was a fun switch. Like I know most people have. I don't think it's quite done yet, even the next book. But the 40-page adventures book is going to be a real fun departure from what the people who've seen Drawing Blood and Ragdoll's be so far.
I like the sick koi fish. I don't know why I'm fixated on the sick koi fish, but
he was a lot of fun to draw.
Because he just looks like he's on the verge of dying, and he's this pathetic thing. So that's something to look forward to. Is this sick koi fish?
What's his Herbert is the name of the koi? A major character is an ailing koi fish who
just the saddest fish you've ever seen in your life.
Very moving final speech at the end of the 40 pages, by the way, because that's where you want to go with that. But my point, where we started this whole section was that the story idea of that, which is that the supervillain has stolen all of the fish in New York City. There's just a part of I don't have the brain that does that as a story idea, and that's not a knock on my talent or your talent. It's just it's a different way it's a child's way of perceiving the world, in a way that I would go, well, now how would he do that? Would he refrigerate it and in shoulder that doesn't matter at all.
Batman needs armor, otherwise he'll get hit with bullets.
Yeah.
How did that survive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on, Mike. Can I take a guess? Like, do you just go with the fish are all missing?
It's pretty much, yeah. That's the first page.
There's a story on the news about how no one can get fish these days.
That's literally the first scene's in a sushi restaurant, and they run out, and that's the
motivation to action.
Yeah, and then everything.
We're out of sushi. Cats that can't eat raw fish. This is a crisis that we have to solve.
And it's part of that whole, the food chain as it is understood in cartoons. Which goes dog, cat, mouse, fish is the other. Fish and bird are the other branches off the under cat. Evolution chart that we use exclusively in cartoons. Cats and dogs cannot be friends. Dogs and it's a very complicated view of biology. Obviously,
cats and dogs cannot be friends. It's always romantic.
I've seen it with my own eyes in life, but not in cartoons. It is an unacceptable. It is a genre breaking trope to have cats and dogs like each other. But yeah,
I realized years ago I was interviewed for a kids radio show thing, and it was a kid doing the interview, and I had a bad guy dinosaur in Blastosaurus, and he was a velociraptor, obviously, because I'm not that good. I don't know anything
terrible,
about dinosaurs. I know 3 types of dinosaurs. I don't like dinosaurs. I'm like dinosaurs in space. They're the 2 things that I cannot get behind. And anyway, so I had a velociraptor in there. He was a bad guy, and this kid interviews me. He goes, "Hey, did you make the bad dinosaur red because your good dinosaur is green? So it was like a traffic light?" I was like, "Oh, that's how I have to be thinking." No, I didn't. I didn't think about that at all. I didn't even do the coloring on that issue. All right, fair enough. Yep, you're right. There is a good and bad traffic light.
That is the joy of the whole thing, though. You set it out into the world, and people see in it what they want to see it in. Of course, I'm from the generation where half of the dinosaurs I was taught about as a child never happened, didn't exist.
When they have feathers now.
Well, but like the Brontosaurus, which was like a staple dinosaur, not a real thing. It's the head of one dinosaur on the body of a plesiosaur with the legs from something else. Like they got it all. They got it all wrong.
I thought they somehow brought the Brontosaurus back. I don't know if it was reclassified or something.
It's just maybe they called the plesiosaur the Brontosaurus now, but I remember the moment where they said, "Oh, in pterodactyls, that was the head from one thing stuck on the body of another thing." No, those are pterosaurs, and then there's a second. It's all chaos.
Pterodons, it's kind of like a Pluto thing. I think you know how they keep like Pluto is a planet one day and then not. And then there's public outrage, so it becomes a planet again, but then it's not.
And I'm like, what about Stellar Pluto? No.
What do I do?
It's out of the team. It's no more.
I also think it's funny, Richard, that you don't like dinosaurs and you don't like space, but you're a big Ninja Turtles fan, and issue 4 or 5 is dinosaurs in space.
Yeah, but David, I read my first Ninja Turtles comics when I was 25.
Our cats
I was young enough that like the TV show started when I was 4, and And like, we didn't have comic stores in New Zealand. Like, there are 4 comic stores in the entire country.
Wow, really?
I didn't read an actual comic book until I was 16 years old, by which time I'd already published 35 of them. Like, as a kid, the reason I started making comics was because I thought, these don't exist anymore. If I'm the only person in the universe making them, I'll probably be a millionaire by the time I'm 10.
Were you in I know the scale is a little different, but were you in a big town, a big city in New Zealand, or were you in a small town?
No, I was in Auckland, which is technically the biggest city in the country. Right. It's 1.5 million people. But like, there was a comic store there, but for me to get to it, it would have been a 2-hour bus ride.
Wow.
Like, it was, I went to a comics. I wandered into my first comic convention by accident because I was in the city looking for a comic store because I couldn't find any in the yellow pages.
Wow. And you found a connection. You found a convention by accident.
I did, and I'm very proud of this. I've never paid money to get into a convention because that first convention, they were unloading craft dinners. Were trying to like get mac and cheese to take off in New Zealand. It did not work, and they were unloading a truck full of mac and cheese, and they saw me walking past, and they said, "You look like you like food," which I think is the best compliment.
Amazing.
If you help us carry this, we'll give you some. And I said, "Can I just go in there for free if I take a box of them?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And I wandered in, and I like bought. I lucked in. I managed to buy every issue of Miracle Man for $15.
Nice.
But, Marvel Man in America. Sorry, right. Marvel Man. I bought the Miracle Man one. And like, I was like, "Oh, comics are cool. I guess these do exist." I mean, I kind of knew they existed by then, but still.
And
it's funny though to start with Miracle Man, Marvel Man, which is of course a deconstruction of other comic books, which you were not reading.
I will say this: like, I that weekend, because I went back the next day. By that point, I had a staff T-shirt for the convention because I like to steal things, and wandered in for free again. And I picked up. I was like, I like this Alan Moore fellow. I've never heard of him, so I picked up Watchmen and From Hell. And that week, my English teacher caught me reading Miracle Man in class, and it was the birth issue, which is not a great thing for your teacher. And I was like, I'm really sorry about that. I don't know. I got nothing. The next day, I'm reading From Hell, and it's the bathtub handjob scene that same teacher catches me reading, picks it up, and said, "Right, I'm going to read this aloud to the class for you, Richard." And he starts reading. My teacher's name was Mr. Perkins, and this was the scene where the woman giving the handjob refers to the penis as the Mr. Perkins.
Yeah, wow.
I did not do well in that class.
Wow.
It's a god shot.
That's amazing. For those who haven't read Marvel Man, Miracle Man, the birth issue is a fairly groundbreaking thing that shows an actual human birth in a comic book, in great graphic detail, which is also kind of shows the power Alan Moore had in the mid '80s, that he was able to say, I'm going to do a birth scene in a superhero comic. And that's never been done.
That was the 9th issue. So it was the 9th comic I'd ever read in my entire life. And I was like, I guess this is what comics are.
I think unrealistic expectations were set.
Imagine if you'd be like, I'm just reading some Batman as a kid, issue 9. Oh, Batman gives birth. Cool. Like, that changes you. You can't go back.
Now I want to see Batman give birth, actually. Yeah. Comic book. I think that would
I was going to say it. Yeah. It explains all the poop, I think.
Yeah.
One interesting thing, and is this with the kids and the adults type thing, is with you working on My Little Pony, there's a huge adult following of My Little Pony. So you have this really interesting contrast of something that's made for little girls and has a huge convention size following of bronies
men,
and adult
yeah.
men, you know, so much that there's been
Love the
documentaries
bronies.
made of them, and you've gone to conventions, you know, and
Mm.
not a kid to be seen.
No.
But the stories are
Some
still
of
all for
them,
kids.
no, the one in Germany had no kids, but some of the ones in the States that I've
Yeah.
been to, they
Okay.
have kids. Like they'll have kids activities, sessions and stuff that I'd like show them how to draw a pony sort of thing. So yeah, there's kids in some of them. The one in Germany didn't have kids.
That was amazing. So she gets invited to Germany for a BronyCon. I said, I have to go to this. 100%. There's no way I'm not going to not be here for this.
Yeah, I mean, it was my first time to Europe. I didn't want to go alone either. So.
Sure. I don't think you should have been alone at a My Little Pony Con in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the opening scene of a horror movie that I myself don't want to watch.
I
Yeah,
had
it's kind of like Bone meets From Hell.
Mhm.
that. If you're not going to use that.
brought it all the way home.
It's a great moment where Brenda was being introduced on stage as one of the guests, and it was a room of about 2,000 grown adults and their stuffed ponies.
Mhm.
And she walked out on stage after being introduced. It was like a rock concert. It was like Kiss. It's just
God bless the enthusiasts. They pay our rent sometimes, but it is there are fandoms where I'm just like, okay, I don't, you do you, man. I'm sure there's something I love that's as absurd as that. I'm sure there are many things I love.
Like honestly, can't we just let kids have their stuff that they like and not try and make it gross an adult? Like, I work really hard to do like a lot of cool kid stuff and a lot of cool adult stuff, and they're for different audiences. And when like I get sent emails from someone who's like, "Hey, I wrote you this sexy Blastosaurus story," I'm like, "Why though? You could have like any time that you can make that decision, you could instead just decide to go and buy yourself some ice cream. Like that's all. That's a better option than writing the words, "I'm not a triceratops." Like, don't.
Wow.
That's a good joke, though. That is a solid. That's a
great
solid joke.
But I mean, sure, but like, don't put it in Blastosaurus. You're not putting it in Blastosaurus. I guess that's the point. But don't be. I mean, look, you can like My Little Pony at any age. You don't need to make it sexy.
Yeah.
Don't.
And yet,
I'm sorry, I'm not alienated.
That stuff is such a big draw. I think one of the great moments in an adult's life is when they realize, this isn't for me. It's okay that I have moved on from this. This doesn't have to be for me anymore. One of the fan things I just completely reject is the whole "you ruined my childhood" narrative. It's like, man, Steven Spielberg's been making bad Indiana Jones movies since 1985. Where you been? Like, this is not.
Unless the writer of that thing is like also your parents, they didn't ruin your childhood.
Yeah, exactly. It's I hated the last Bond movie. I'm a huge James Bond fan since my childhood. And when we walked out of Spectre, I turned to my wife and I said, "They can stop. It's good. They don't, they want to." I'm the world's biggest Bond fan. I'm like, they can stop making these movies. I'm good. But I'm not like. I always used to say, to my wife's great disappointment, Chris Pine has not shown up at my house to throw my William Shatner DVDs in the fire. Like, there's no. It's still there. I can watch them whenever I want. We're good.
And
there's no.
What you absolutely did not do after seeing Spectre is get mad about it.
Yeah.
You were just like, "Oh, cool, okay."
Yeah.
Also,
okay. This is now this series is now in the hands of really terrible writers and directors, and that'll happen sometimes. Moving on.
When they rewrote the Smurfs to include Nanny and Sassette, I was mad about it because I was 9.
Right.
And it made the toys inconsistent.
Right.
When they made a Gargamel figure the same size as the Smurfs, I was mad about it because I was 9 and already too old for Smurfs.
But that's I feel that way about all long running franchises. You dip in and out of them when you like. I used to say towards the end when Deep Space Nine and Next Generation were on the air, and I was watching them intermittently, I was like, this is sort of like reading your hometown newspaper after you've left. It's like, oh, we're at war with the Klingons again. How about that? You know, like, oh, Worf got married. You know, like, I don't really care, you know, but I'm just like, I'm checking in. Oh, something's going on with the Kardashians. Oh, that's nice. You know, but to be like completely, maybe that's just a gene that I'm missing, but that whole, like, it's like the last Star Wars trilogy. Are they the 3 greatest movies ever made in the history of mankind? No. But also I was not 12, 15, and 18 when they came out. Mm-hmm. And I will never be 12 years old again when a Star Wars movie comes out. That is a physically impossible thing. And I'm not going to blame J.J. Abrams for me not being 12.
If your Facebook comment about The Simpsons is complaining that it's not as good as one you saw 30 years ago, rethink your life.
Right.
Like, think about every single thing you have done leading up. Like, I want everyone to stop and be like, hey, what if Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life showed me what the world would be like without me? It's better. Shit. Just stop.
I think we will end on that note. Amen. We're starting to wind down here anyway. Guys, why don't we go ahead and check out? We'll go around the picture here and tell us what you're up to, where we can find you, sell us your wares, all that stuff. Richard, why don't we start with you?
I'm Richard Fairgray. It's as it sounds, A-Y, not E-Y. I am the writer and artist on Black Sand Beach and Blastosaurus, richardfairgray.com. I'm on Instagram as @RichardFairgrayAuthor, and I'm @RichardFairgray everywhere else. My book, Black Sand Beach, is out everywhere now. It's a 200-page graphic novel. It's super good. Volume 2 comes out next year, and I'm working on Volume 3 right now. The ebook comes out October 6th, and there's a free sample of the first 3 short stories from my short horror fiction collection. And my podcast, Tales from Black Sand Beach, the first season is all online everywhere you get podcasts.
Great.
And this is Baku.
He really wants to be seen here.
Yeah.
Cats.
Yeah, he's our mascot.
He's hungry. He wants his bedtime snack, so he's on here. If you're screaming outside.
Yeah, sorry about all the cat meowing.
Yeah, he's in agony.
It's a feature, not a bug. So, Brenda, what are you working on?
I am Brenda Hickey. I work on My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, IDW, at Gretzko with Oni Press, and do some creator-owned stuff. We're
Pegamoose Press.
Pegamoose Press together,
yeah,
which we self-publish our own books at. So Halls of the Turnip King and Angor Napkin so far, and building on that. So that's, and then you.
Yeah, we're trying to really push the Kickstarter worked really well for us, having 2 books go through there, both successful. We made some nice hardcover books. And our next book we're going to do is actually going to be a collaboration that we both wrote and illustrated together, like half and half the book, and it kind of bleeds over in a weird David Lynchy kind of way. And it's a haunted house story, so we can do a little bit of spooky, without being too creepy, but just spoopy.
Kind of all ages.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's going to be coming out next year, probably May. Something like that next year. We'll run a Kickstarter for that. See. And hopefully there'll be conventions and all this stuff. We get to see you guys and sell all these books we're making.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah. I guess we should say where we are on the internet. I mostly use Instagram. I'm just Brenda_E_Hickey on Instagram. And then we also have the Pegamoose Press Instagram.
Yeah. PegamoosePress.com is our website. Google Troy Little, you'll find us on there.
Nice.
Where you at, Avallone?
And Troy Little also has upcoming soon the radically rearranged Ronin Ragdolls 40-page special. We owe that to our Kickstarter supporters, but that will be, as soon as they get it in their hands, we'll probably be soliciting it for comic book shops. Finishing up Drawing Blood Volume 2, which also will go to Kickstarter people, but will then... probably that'll be a graphic novel early next year. And I do mean graphic, and we won't be doing floppies on it. It will just be coming out as a trade paperback. And I can be found at davidavallonefreelance.com. And that has the links to all of the things.
I have to say, Avallone, I've enjoyed the sort of evolution of your picture. You know, our podcast listeners, you know, on Apple or whatever, will be deprived of this. But if you're watching on YouTube, Avallone started out very interestingly lit by the setting sun coming through the. And over the course, you know, there's just been this
corner of the apartment has a red light that goes on automatically.
Yeah, you look like you're in a club in Goodfellas or something like that.
So yeah, I thought about supplementing it, and I went, no, this is a good look for me.
Yeah, I think maybe I need to get like a blue light, and then we can just next time do this. But you know, without droning on for too long, I am Rylend Grant. I can be found everywhere on all social media platforms at Rylend Grant. It's RYLENDGRANT. I always spell it because it's not a real name. My parents made it up, probably while heavily intoxicated. So I feel the need to make clarifications. My books, the Ringo Award-winning Aberrant and the recently Ringo nominated Banjax are available in fine comic shops everywhere, and via Comixology and Amazon, the whole 9 yards. My recently kickstarted book, The Jump, is still available. If you missed the Kickstarter, it's at The Jump, all one word, .backerkit.com. Check in there for plenty of goodies. If you are watching on one of our many YouTube channels, make sure to smash the like button. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to tell your friends. If you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever one gets his or her ear crack, again, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, grab your friend's phone, subscribe for him or her, and all that noise. We will be back next week with more fun, more debauchery, more enlightening conversation. But yeah, thanks, guys. It was a hell of a discussion here.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah. I'm so sorry I talked about poop that much. I
love it.
Guys, for that.
Yes.
There's definitely an audience for that, and this is that audience, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you for poop. All right, guys. See you next week. Take it easy.
Bye.